I'm Brendan Stone. I'm a professor at the University of Sheffield, based in the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, but also working in medicine and mental health. So I suppose I'm not sure whether co-production is really a feasibility in mental health, and I'm going to be doing a talk shortly where I kind of say it isn't feasible. It's actually an impossibility. Doesn't mean to say it's not a useful concept though. I think it's a sort of conceptual tool, the idea of co-production, which is sort of utopian, impossible, but by using it we can determine where barriers to good practice lie. The reason I'm interested in these questions is, I suppose, because of the subjugated, hidden knowledge that exists within individuals and communities who have lived with extreme distress, madness and distress. I'm very interested in narrative. I'm interested in narrative histories of mental ill health. But in particular, I'm interested in the kind of unofficial histories of mental ill health as embodied in survivor stories. I think this is a huge resource which would help us all to understand issues around madness and distress much more than we do. There's a lot of interest in stories in various mental health contexts these days. And I run a project called Storying Sheffield, and I use stories a lot in my work with people with mental health problems, but I'm really quite agnostic when it comes to the value of stories. It's not that it's perhaps rather to explain it better. I think stories in mental health and elsewhere, particularly with individuals and groups who may have been marginalised in some way, stories can be used and abused. So I'm really interested in problematizing how we think about stories in contexts such as mental health, and that we have a sophisticated awareness of what a story is, what it might be doing, how we should respond to it. So on a very basic level, a personal story embodies personal knowledge and often will embody intimate, painful experience. And as such, if somebody shares that story with us, particularly if we've asked them to do that, it needs to be received within a context which is serious and understands the seriousness of what's going on, this kind of transaction, if you will. A story is a sort of it makes a demand on us, a personal story. It demands that we listen seriously and take its challenges seriously. So for me, stories embody knowledge, and we need to treat those stories with respect. I would also want to say that an individual story is never just individual. We, as human beings, we live within the world, within social contexts, within cultural contexts. Our story touches on society and culture and politics. It tells us, or it tells all of us, something about us as individuals, but also something about the world and the context in which we live. And therefore, I think as listeners to stories, we need to be thinking through this, how we can respond intelligently to personal narrative.